The Wealthy Life is brought to you by investment dealer Raymond James. Life well planned. See what a Raymond James advisor can do for you.
With us today is financial advisor Tracy Theemes, sharing tips for repartnering after divorce. Tracy, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
You have a very interesting background. Please tell us about that.
Well, it's a bit unusual for a financial advisor to have a psych background, but I studied psychology and was fully intending on becoming a child psychologist. So I was working as, finishing up my PhD, working in the downtown east side as an infant development consultant. And I had one of those crossroads kinds of experiences where near the end of my year there, 3 of the babies on my caseload died. And I was devastated, but I was also shocked that the reason I felt that they died wasn't because of their developmental issues, it was because of economic reasons. And I really felt that if they'd been on the west side, if there was more money in their family, that the things that happened wouldn't have happened. So I was plunged into a full-blown spiritual crisis, basically pounding my chest and saying, why are some people rich and some people poor? It just seemed so unfair. And I just felt like I couldn't continue on that path until I understood more about that. I mean, babies are dying because there's no money in their family in the city that I live in. And yeah, it was a big deal because it takes a long time to do your PhD. And I was like right near the end, and yeah.
Well, the good news is that psychology and your training actually does play an important part in what you do for people today.
Yes,
and that awful experience you went through then jumped you ahead to trying to really make an impactful difference in a different way.
Yes.
So as a financial advisor, what areas do you focus on?
So, of course, families is a big, I mean, everybody's in a context. Even working as a child psychologist, you try to pull the kid out and try to fix them, and then you put them back into a weirdo family, and the child's going to revert to the same dysfunctional behaviors, or functional as the case may be, and the family's dysfunctional. Well, it's the same with money. Money doesn't exist out of context. It has no meaning until we apply meaning to it. So in a family, you think that it's $20 is $20. Well, it's not. $20 is whatever value the people in your context assign it. And it means different things in different part of the city. It means different things to a man than to a woman, to a child than to an adult. So it ended up being highly applicable. So I thought I was studying money, but really what I was just doing was studying a more practical side of psychology, and probably the most complex side of psychology in this day and age. Money's such an important currency, and it's so much emotion and so problematic for people. Like, it's the biggest bruise in a lot of humans' life is their relationship with money. So all day long I'm a psychologist. Yeah. So it is true, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, and I know that I've met people who have an absolute mental block when anything to do with money pops up. Like they just, no, I don't understand it. I don't understand. I don't want to know. I don't want to think about it. Yes. Which is a very scary and dangerous place to be. They don't have to be the expert, but I really believe everybody needs to know at least the basics, just the basics, so that you can be financially independent. Yes. And when you're independent, you have confidence. And when you have that financial independence, sometimes you can prevent some of those bad things from happening.
Yes.
Now, when we talk about relationships, husbands and wives, I would say money is probably one of the biggest reason people separate. Yeah. And then when people are repartnering again, I think that money gets skimmed over. I don't think people talk about it enough.
They don't. So in our business at Sophia, we started out really specializing because of my background in psychology and my business partner's background. We started out specializing in people that were moving through the transitions out of marriage. So you develop your toolkit, and there's certain things you're working with lawyers and accountants and business valuators, and you're putting together these plans, and you're helping people bring as much fairness, as much collaboration in the process as you can. Now, we've been in business a decade, and aren't these same people getting their guts up and deciding to repartner? Now, you would think having gone through it once before and knowing how bad things could potentially be, that this time you'd have your eyes wide open. It's not actually the case. So this has become fascinating to us. It really is fascinating.
Well, because people can change, but they don't usually change. And so they just kind of rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
We do. And I think there's so much social and emotional baggage around romantic love and what it means to actually have full, transparent conversations, that people attach a lot of meaning to those conversations that I don't think is true. For instance, if you ask me how much my RSP is worth, it means I don't trust you. No,
I'm just asking how much your RSP is.
Right. And if I say, you know what, I think we should both do a net worth statement, and everybody freaks out, then the conversation becomes, why is this so touchy? And if it's touchy now, isn't it going to be touchy later?
And all the more reason people need to talk about it now. And it can deepen those relationships. And you need to be, it's part of being open and transparent. And I think a second marriage or a third marriage, when you re-enter those relationships, you want to do so sharing, so that you have a good platform for a long, happy marriage.
So the easy thing is saying that.
Yes.
The easy thing is making that prescription and walking around and beating our chests and saying, this is obvious that everybody has to have this conversation, but because of my background in psychology, I'm also interested in why we won't.
Why won't we?
Well, we won't because we're assigning meaning to the conversation that may not exist. We think that we're communicating to a potential spouse who you're supposed to have the most trusting relationship with in the world. We're assuming that that means that we don't trust them. Also, women especially, we're making a broad-based approach here, are not necessarily brought up to talk about money, and may have been actually brought up that it's unseemly, it's not your role to talk about it. There's also, people are wounded. Just what I said, there's a lot of wounds around money.
So they have maybe their guard up in their defense mechanism.
Right. So some of the things that we, first of all, we provide practice questions for people. Here are some of the things, but the other piece that I work with folks is to, instead of, thinking that this conversation's potentially going to be the end of our relationship or the end of our engagement, to just start getting very curious, but gently curious about it, and to lay groundwork, to create the structure of the communication first. So the questions aren't as important as, how do you think, like Sybil, how do you think you and I are going to talk about this? I want to talk about, how will we talk about this? Okay, we only talk about this before we drink beer, before 4 p.m.
Yep. When we're in a good mood.
When we're in a good mood after we've both slept, and then you put parameters on it. Everybody can call time out, as long as you say when you're going to come back into the conversation. So I think the first conversations are, how will we have this conversation in a way that keeps us romantically with one another and in harmony with each other, but still allows us to dig in deeper to some of the things, and nobody agrees on money.
So setting that stage, Tracy, then lines it up perfectly for the questions people should be asking.
Yes.
Want to know the questions that you should be talking about? Contact us at thewealthylife.com to get your worksheet, which will go over the 5 big questions you should ask before repartnering. Tracy, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yes, it's a pleasure.
And when we return, what should be done with all those boxes of old tax records? Find out after the break.